The Cartron murders refers to the killing of a family of peasant farmers on their farm near Baumières, in central France, on July 21, 1946. The murders were apparently motiveless and remain unsolved. On the morning of Thursday, July 25, 1946, Mrs. Jean Jagan, the 35-year-old neighbor of the Carterons, became concerned as she had not seen the family for several days. She went to their farm, which was 100 meters from her own house, and saw worrying signs through the window. Mrs. Jagan's husband then alerted the mayor and the police in Embrault. The prosecutor's office in Châteauroux requested the assistance of the judicial police in Limoges. Several senior police officers and inspectors were dispatched to the scene. A locksmith broke open the door. The scene inside resembled an execution. The bodies of Kleber Cartron, his wife Alphonsine, their son André and another boy, Claude Goddard, a ward of the state, were found face down with their arms and legs bound, all executed with a bullet to the back of the head. The family dog had also been killed in its basket. 6 spent cartridges and 2 unspent ones were found at the crime scene. The police's report emphasized the farm's relatively isolated location, described the 3 rooms and mentioned the door to the room where the crime was committed was locked. The key had been removed and could not be found. The window had a smashed pane. Despite the disorder in the room and the fact that the cupboards had been ransacked, there were no signs of a struggle. Detectives were initially unable to determine the type of weapon that had fired the bullets. A gunsmith could only confirm that the 6 cartridges came from the same weapon. It was not until 2 years later that it was established that the weapon had been a Sten submachine gun. A motive for robbery seemed unlikely because the family was very poor. For a while, the authorities investigated a theory that the crime was committed by a Legionnaire acquaintance of Kleber Cartron who was inflicting personal revenge. However, this theory was dismissed as the Legionnaire had been in Algeria at the time of the murders. With nothing else to go on, the investigators were left to rely on questioning the local population. Local working-class people were reluctant to talk to the authorities. Several theories were suggested but yielded no leads. New evidence arose when a farm worker, employed along with Kleber Cartron at the Ferme de Paissos farm, stated that Cartron had been scared the previous winter. On 2 occasions, Cartron confided in his colleague that he had been followed along the track that led to his home. A few hundred meters away, close to a public forest, a bag was found which belonged to Cartron and contained a schoolbook. 11 days later, a lumberjack came across a makeshift shelter in the forest. This made it possible to establish a link between the crime scene, the place where the bag was found, and the shelter, all of which were located within a few fields' distance of each other. At the same time, a local rumor was circulating. Some believed that Kleber Cartron, who enjoyed poaching in his spare time, had surprised members of the French resistance who were appropriating a piece of loot that had been airdropped into the forest during the Second World War. A Sten submachine gun was a weapon commonly used by the resistance. However, no concrete evidence was found to support this theory, which also lacked an explanation for why the resistance members would later have gone to Carteron's house to kill the whole family, instead of just killing him on the spot. In April 1947, a final report from Superintendent Duraud closed the case for the time being, without being able to find a motive or a suspect. Oak Grove Jane Doe is an unidentified murder victim found dismembered in the Willamette River, near Oak Grove, Oregon, over a period of several months in 1946. The first discovery consisted of a woman's torso which was found wrapped in burlap, floating near the Wisdom Light Moorage on April 12, 1946. The arms and one thigh of the victim were discovered the following day, April 13, floating against the lock system of Willamette Falls, in similar burlap packaging. Both the hands and foot had been severed from the limbs, and were missing. In July 1946, the second thigh was found in the Willamette near Oregon City, and additional women's clothing believed to be that of the victim was recovered from the Clackamas River around the same time. In October 1946, the victim's severed head was found in the river near the location of the original torso discovery, but her hands and feet were never recovered. Though initially reported to have been a female in her late teens or 20s, a pathologist from the University of Oregon Medical School confirmed the victim was a middle-aged Caucasian woman between 40 and 50 years old. The case received national media attention, appearing on the front page of numerous news outlets, but her identity and killer remain unknown. In 2004, her murder case was formally reopened, but remains a cold case. The evidence as well as the woman's remains were lost by law enforcement sometime in the 1950s, rendering contemporary DNA testing impossible. On April 12, 1946, 3 people walking along the east bank of the Willamette River near Oak Grove, Oregon, discovered a burlap sack floating in an eddy offshore. Inside, they found the torso of a Caucasian female, along with several articles of clothing including an overcoat, long underwear, and a dark sweater. The package had been wound with rope and wire, and also contained curtain sash weights. Initially, the individuals who found the sack believed it was a sack of drowned kittens. The following day, April 13th, the woman's right thigh and both arms were discovered in the river in similar burlap packaging, floating above Willamette Falls, approximately 6 miles from the location where the torso was discovered. Sash weights were also discovered in the package containing the arms and thigh, and it had been wound with telephone wire. The hands had been severed from the arms, and the foot severed from the leg, neither of which could be located. 2 fishermen made the discovery, and told authorities they had noticed the burlap package floating in the area at least 30 days prior, but did not immediately find it suspicious. However, after reading of the discovery of the torso downstream, they returned to the area and found the package still floating against the fall's lock system, after which they notified law enforcement. Police searched the area around the falls, and made plaster casts of footprints found in the mud along the bank near where the arms and leg were found. 3 months later, in late July 1946, the victim's left thigh was discovered floating under the Oregon City Bridge near McLaughlin Boulevard. On July 29, 1946, the Albany Democrat-Herald reported that bundles of women's clothing had also been discovered in the Clackamas River, a tributary of the Willamette. This led detectives to suspect that the perpetrator had possibly disposed of the body in both rivers. In September, what appeared to be fragments of a human scalp were discovered near Willamette Falls. The following month, on October 13, 1946, a package containing the woman's severed head was found near the location where her torso had been discovered, by a married couple from Oak Grove. At the time, the murder was referred to by the media as the Wisdom Light murder, based on the fact that the torso had been discovered near the Wisdom Light moorage. Ray Reliance, the Clackamas County coroner who first examined the torso, estimated the victim to be in her teens or early 20s, and weighing around 115 pounds. Reliance told the media that the perpetrator had done rather a neat job, at least he knew where the joints were. Dr. Warren Hunter, a pathologist from the University of Oregon Medical School, subsequently examined the torso and determined it belonged to a female, past middle age, about 50. Hunter also estimated that the torso had been placed in the water no more than 36 hours prior to its discovery. Prior to Hunter's analysis, national newspapers had reported the coroner's estimation that the victim was in her teens or early 20s, resulting in a barrage of phone calls to law enforcement from concerned parents. The pathologist concluded the woman was between 5 feet 2 inches and 5 feet 4 inches tall, weighed approximately 140 pounds to 150 pounds, and had light brown hair. The lower portion of the torso showed burn marks, possibly from a blowtorch, leading police to believe the victim had been tortured. Portland Weather Bureau official Elmer Fisher stated at the time that the torso could have been placed in the water anywhere below Oregon City Falls, now Willamette Falls, but could not have drifted upstream from Portland. The day after the torso was discovered, on April 14, 1946, a false confession was made by a man from a telephone booth in Milwaukee. The man claimed to have known the woman's identity, as well as the location where she had been dismembered. Law enforcement, however, determined the call was a prank and dismissed any connection to the murder. On September 9, 1946, it was reported that law enforcement were investigating a possible connection between the remains of Marie Nastos, a 47-year-old woman from Seattle, Washington, who had gone missing on August 24, 1945 en route to Seattle after a trip to Wenatchee. Nastos matched the physical description of the victim, standing at 5 feet 2 inches, weighing approximately 120 pounds, and having brown hair. Upon the discovery of the victim's head in October 1946, it was revealed the woman wore dentures. The cause of death was determined to have been blunt force trauma to the head. After death, the victim was dismembered, potentially via saw, and disposed of in the river. Law enforcement at the time investigated a potential connection between the woman and 2 missing persons cases in California and Indiana, but were unable to make a connection. In July 1951, agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation interviewed convicted murderer Roy Moore from his prison cell in North Carolina. He purportedly recounted in detail his murder and dismemberment of a woman whom he claimed to have disposed of in the Molalla River, but provided no information linking him to the Oak Grove Jane Doe. In 2004, the case was formally reopened by the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. In a 2017 interview with Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, Sergeant John Krummenacker, it was revealed that evidence in the case, including the location of the woman's clothing, jawbone, dentures, and other remains, were unknown. It is believed the evidence was lost sometime in the 1950s. Krummenacker commented, "The end result is this: there's a middle-aged woman that was brutally murdered with a blunt force trauma blow to her head. Then she was sawn up, cut up, dismembered and thrown in this river like a piece of garbage."